explain something.
So last week I talked about buying ads to promote and market your podcast, spending a little bit of money and putting that towards marketing efforts as part of your overall strategy for your show. Organic growth is great, but bumping up your podcast with a little bit of ad spend can help accelerate your growth. But this week, I'm talking about finding advertisers for your podcast. And later on in a moment, I'm going to be giving you 3 online marketplaces that match podcasters with brands that are looking to advertise on podcasts. The reason I wanted to do these little 2-part series was because before you can think about trying to get sponsors to buy ads on your show, you need to invest in your show and you need to grow it. And once you get those numbers up, you're going to be in a better place to start being able to reach out to advertisers to get a little bit of money flowing in for your show, for your hard work. So how do ads work? Well, for the sake of this episode, I'm going to focus on host-read ads. However, in addition to host-read ads, there are programmatic ads. Programmatic ads are pre-produced by an outside company, oftentimes with like an outside voiceover talent. You've probably heard these. Maybe you've heard something for like Toyota or Geico. It's, they hire out the talent, they produce it, and then it gets inserted into your podcast. But we're talking about host-read ads today. And in the case of host-read ads, it's a situation where podcast advertisers, aka like brands or companies, are going to pay you to promote their products or services in one of your episodes or throughout the course of several episodes. Typically, they'll send you a script and you'll be asked to read it verbatim and or ad-lib and inject some personal experience, like a story of you using the product or service. I produce several podcasts every week. And I work with some large shows who have sponsors, and we'll get pitches from our advertising agency, the company that sells ads on our behalf. We'll get a script. Oftentimes we'll get the product in advance so that the guys or girls on the show can talk about what they like about the product and inject some kind of personal anecdote. But there's 3 main places that these ads go in podcasts. When a brand or company sends you an insertion order for the ad, you're going to be informed where you need to place that ad in your show. And the 3 main places that ads go in podcasts are in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. And that's called a pre-roll. Starts right before the show starts. You've probably seen these on YouTube. The mid-roll, which is somewhere in the middle of the show, and or the post-roll, which is after the show, which it's my prediction that kind of post-roll spots, well, one, they're not nearly as popular as the other 2 because people tend to sign off before the end of a show. And it's my prediction that they're going to become even less popular because why is a brand going to want to spend ad money to have you read something at the end of the show where people have already dropped off, or maybe people just kind of turn the show off at that point? Oftentimes the programmatic ads, which I mentioned briefly earlier, these pre-produced ads, maybe you'll get an insertion order, or a lot of times there's an automated process via your podcast hosting platform that'll put a programmatic ad at the end of the show. It's rare that a host-read ad would go there. Okay, so let's talk about ad rates. How much you get paid for an ad read depends on the size of your audience and the CPM that you and or someone on your team negotiated for the ad read. So what CPM is, it's kind of a stupid phrase, but it stands for cost per mil, M-I-L-L-E, mil. You might say milli, I don't know what the fuck, but apparently that's Latin for 1,000. So it's basically like saying the cost per 1,000 downloads. And that's how you're going to kind of negotiate, or the ad agency is going to negotiate for how much your show's worth and how much you're going to get paid per 1,000 downloads. CPMs can vary, but they usually hover around the $20 mark. So in the case of a CPM, it's going to be $20 per 1,000 downloads. That's like the formula for podcasting. So if your episode gets downloaded 50,000 times, you can figure that out by 20. So $20, 20 times 50 and that's $1,000. So you'd make $1,000 off that ad. Let's say your podcast gets downloaded 20,000 times. That's 20 times 20, which equals 400. So you're going to get paid $400 for that ad read. Pre-roll and post-rolls typically do pay a smaller CPM. Mid-rolls cost the most. Mid-roll is kind of like the golden child of ad spots. And also keep in mind that it's possible to have more than one pre-roll and more than one mid-roll. So if you have a big audience, you can begin to see like how lucrative getting sponsors could be. All right, so there are advertising agencies that work with podcasters and sell ads directly on behalf of the podcaster. But in this episode, I wanted to share 3 online marketplaces with you that you can sign up for and start monetizing your podcast. These places pair brands and companies with podcasters. And so it's a great way to begin making a little bit of money from your podcast. The first one I want to talk about is Advertisecast. And so Advertisecast is an online marketplace. And once you sign up and you're accepted into their system, someone from their team will reach out with you. They're going to work on setting up your CPM, kind of letting you know what your show might be worth and negotiating with you to kind of set a rate for yourself. Typically recommend like podcast industry averages, and that you stay closely within that range, although there is a little bit of wiggle room that you can set the rate, the CPM that you want. So they don't control what advertisers you're willing to work with. You can set those boundaries. If an advertiser reaches out, you can accept or deny the request. And with advertising in general, guys, you want to work with companies that are a good fit for your audience, probably as well as your morals and your values. Their staff is going to support you along the way. So it's not like you sign up and then you're on your own. If an advertiser reaches out, you do decide to go with them. You're going to get your talking points, the air dates that the ad needs to air on, whatever it is, your promo code, or sometimes you get a URL. They're going to say whether it's a pre-roll, post-roll, mid-roll. So you're going to get all that information. And they're owned by Libsyn. And so I'm confident that the support is good because Libsyn support is great. Been in the game a long time and really are around to support podcasters. You're going to get paid through Advertisecast in 30 to 60 days, maybe 90 days. It kind of depends on when the advertiser pays Advertisecast. So again, I work on a show. I'm not going to mention the name of it, but it's a large show. A couple months ago, we did a deal with Athletic Greens. We just now got paid. So the host of the show told me this week that they just got paid, and that ad aired several months ago. So I think just business in general, when you're working with like larger companies with larger contracts, it takes a while to get paid. 30, 60, net 90 is pretty average. Even me, myself, sometimes I don't get paid for like 30 days with the clients that I work for, working on improving that. So with Advertisecast, they're going to take 30%, which is honestly typical. I see a lot of ad splits in the industry where the podcaster gets 70% and the agency takes 30%. There are some that work on a 60-40 split, the bigger number always going to the podcaster. All right, the next is Podcorn, Podcorn. Cool name, I know, Podcorn. And this is a marketplace that matches podcasters with brands. It's a little bit different because you have to pitch yourself. You'll see a list of like potential advertisers. There's different options. So aside from just like a host read ad, Podcorn has taken like a little bit different approach where you can like integrate the sponsor into the topic of a podcast episode, making it like relevant to their brand. You could do a guest interview. You could reach out to them where you do a Q&A with an expert from the company that wants to advertise. There's like all these creative ideas. Creative integration is one. You can suggest an original idea of how you would like mention the brand or talk about the brand in your podcast, which is rad. So yeah, Podcorn is cool. A little bit different model. You pitch them. It's interesting. And I think it's kind of cool, like the creative integration stuff. We're seeing more of that. We're seeing other brands and companies advertise like as part of the package, the host read ad on the show, but also like doing a social media video, mentioning it in like YouTube Shorts or writing a blurb about it in your email newsletter. Like this this week's newsletter was brought to you by XYZ company. So I think we're going to see more of that. That's just a prediction of mine. But Podcorn takes 10%, which is a pretty good split. Great split, actually. 90% to you, 10% to them. And then lastly is Gumball. And Gumball is also a marketplace where you go in their portal and everything lives in there. You're going to connect directly with brands. You get transparency over, every transaction. And there's almost 800 advertisers that they work with, which is cool, which is a shitload. So a lot of options there for whatever type of podcast niche you're in. One thing that I think is cool about Gumball is you can actually upload audio samples to showcase your vibe and your style. So that might help. That might help potential advertisers want to work with you because they like the way that you talk. They like the way and your approach to reading scripts and podcasting. So I think that's a cool differentiator there. Great success team dedicated to making sure everything with your campaign is running smoothly. They've got a help center for quick and easy answers. So Gumball's another place to look into. These marketplaces are a cool way to get started with podcast advertising. Yes, you have to have a sizable audience. And honestly, guys, that's going to be true with anything that advertisers are wanting to spend money on. The bigger the audience, the more money that you can make. But even to get in the door to start playing the game, you have to have a sizable audience, which is why last week I did the episode on spending some money to promote your podcast as part of your marketing plan, because the more you grow this thing, the more opportunities you're going to get. And yes, it takes time, and you got to be patient, but you have to, in my opinion, implement some kind of budget to market your podcast in addition to the hustle, in addition to the grind, in addition to that DIY spirit, because you got to be able to compete. And if you're serious about your podcast, and we all know how much work goes into putting out episodes every week, so you might as well try to get a quicker reward from that and accelerate that growth with a little bit of ad spend, because then you can start taking advantage of these opportunities and these marketplaces and get paid for all your hard work and continue to build your brand, your ecosystem, your content, your community. Podcast is a great way to do that. And so I want to be here to help you. And I just wanted to mention these three. So that's Advertisecast, Podcorn, and Gumball. These are kind of more of the indie approach as opposed to signing with a big agency. It's a little more hands-on, whereas with an agency, they kind of take the reins and run with it. But with this, you can kind of see everything that's going on within these websites and these services within their portals. And so great option, guys. Well, shit, that's it for me. Thank you for rocking with me. Guys, I wanted to mention my Instagram. I'm putting up a lot of content. on Instagram, and it's growing, and I want to connect with you. If you've listened to the show, give me a follow. It's at The Podcast Haven. So if you didn't know, The Podcast Haven is the company that I run. It's a podcast production company, and this show, Clipped, falls within that ecosystem. So that's at The Podcast Haven on Instagram. Hit me up, give me a follow. Let's chat. Happy to connect with all you guys that are listening. You're why I'm here. And so I want to continue to add value and build a community and have some fun, have some conversations. I'm going to be at Podcast Movement, which I will talk about in the next couple of episodes. That's coming up March 7th in Vegas. And I love Vegas. If you know me, well, you probably don't know me, but you're going to get to know me by signing up, by following me on Instagram. And we'll have a good time. If you're in Vegas, hit me up, but more on that later. And thank you for listening.